This is a painful story. A story that will show you how love can look sweet like honey in the beginning, but later turn bitter like bitter leaf. It is a story that will teach women never to put all their trust in a man who hides secrets in his heart. It will show how a woman can fall, cry, and even break, yet still rise again stronger. If you listen well, you will feel Grace's pain, you will walk inside her tears, and you will understand why the end of her story is both sad and powerful. Once upon a time, in the busy city of Enugu, there lived a woman called Grace. She was not too tall, not too short, with skin that glowed like the morning sun after rain. People used to say her smile could melt anger. She was gentle, loving, and very hardworking. Grace was a teacher in a small private school where she taught little children how to read and write. Her voice was soft, like music. She believed that patience was the key to life. Grace was married to a man named Jonathan. Jonathan was tall, handsome, with skin as dark as ripe palm fruit. He carried himself with confidence, and he had a way of making people believe every word he said. To outsiders, Jonathan looked like the perfect husband. He walked beside Grace at family events, holding her hand, smiling wide, and telling everyone how much he loved his wife and children. They had 2 children. The first was Chioma, a girl of 9 years old. Chioma was sharp and bright, always asking questions that even adults could not answer. The second child was David, a boy of 6 years old, playful and full of laughter. He would run around the house with toy cars, shouting vroom vroom until Grace begged him to stop. Though they were not rich, Grace believed she was blessed. Their home was small but filled with warmth. Some nights, when there was no light, they would sit outside, eating roasted corn, telling jokes, and laughing till their stomachs hurt. Grace believed this was happiness. She thought love and unity could cover for the lack of money. But love sometimes hides cracks that cannot be seen. It was a Thursday morning when everything began to break. Grace woke up early as usual to prepare food for her family. The smell of fried plantain filled the small kitchen. She packed lunch boxes for Chioma and David. Jonathan came out of the bedroom, dressed in a neat shirt and trousers. "Where are you going so early?" Grace asked with a smile. Jonathan kissed her cheek. "A quick business trip, my dear. Just 2 days. I will be back by Sunday." Grace paused, her hands still on the frying pan. "Business trip? You didn't tell me before." Jonathan waved his hand. It came suddenly. "Don't worry, I will be fine. Just take care of the children." Grace sighed. She trusted him. After all, he was her husband. She packed a small bag of food for him to eat on the way. She hugged him tightly before he left, whispering, "Come back safe." Jonathan smiled, kissed Chioma and David on their foreheads, and walked out. Grace watched from the doorway as he entered a bus and waved. That was the last time she saw him. First, everything felt normal. Grace believed her husband would return on Sunday. She waited. On Sunday evening, she prepared his favorite meal, egusi soup with pounded yam. The children dressed nicely, waiting to welcome their father. But night came and Jonathan did not return. Grace's heart began to beat fast. She called his number. It rang once, then went off. She tried again and again. No answer. Maybe he is delayed, she told herself. She didn't want to panic. But by Monday, when Jonathan had still not returned, Grace knew something was wrong. She went to his office. A security guard shook his head. "Madam, your husband has not been here for weeks. Didn't he tell you? He resigned long ago." Grace's eyes widened. "Resigned? But he told me he was going to work every morning." The man gave her a pitying look. "I don't know what to tell you." Grace felt like the ground was falling under her feet. She rushed home, shaking. Inside the house, she opened the wardrobe. Many of Jonathan's clothes were missing. The suitcase she saw him carry that Thursday morning had not been small. It had been his escape bag. Her chest tightened. Her breath came out in gasps. She searched every drawer, every corner. Things were missing: shoes, watches, documents. Grace sank to the floor, holding her head. 3 days later, her phone buzzed. Her heart leaped. Maybe it was Jonathan explaining everything. She grabbed the phone. It was a text. "Grace, I'm sorry. I cannot continue this marriage. I have found someone else. Please take care of the children. Don't look for me." The phone slipped from Grace's hand. She stood frozen, staring at nothing. Children came running in. "Mummy, who texted you?" Chioma asked. Grace tried to speak, but no words came. Tears rolled down her face. She hugged her children tightly, holding them so close as if they might vanish too. David whispered, "Mummy, where is Daddy?" Grace cried louder. The nights that followed were full of tears. Grace could not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering every word Jonathan had ever said to her. She thought of the promises he made at the altar. She remembered the times he swore he would never leave her. Now all of it was gone. Her neighbors soon found out. Some pitied her. Others mocked. "Ah, Grace, didn't you know? Men like Jonathan always have another woman somewhere." Grace shut her ears. She had no time for gossip. She had to think of her children. Grace began working 2 jobs. In the mornings, she taught at the school. In the evenings, she sold fruits by the roadside. Some days, she came home so tired she could barely stand. But when she saw her children's faces, she found strength. Chioma sometimes asked, "Mummy, is Daddy coming back?" Grace swallowed her pain and forced a smile. "Don't worry, my child. You still have me." At night, when the children slept, Grace cried quietly into her pillow. She felt abandoned, broken, and betrayed. But she promised herself she would not give up. One night, as she sat by the window looking at the stars, she whispered to herself, "I will rise again. I will not let his betrayal destroy me." 5 weeks after Jonathan left, Grace was sweeping the compound when a neighbor ran to her, holding a small envelope. "Grace, someone dropped this at my shop. It has your name on it." Grace's hand shook as she collected it. She tore it open. Inside was a small folded paper. Her eyes widened as she read the words written in Jonathan's handwriting. "Don't wait for me. I have started a new life. Forget me." Grace's knees went weak. She held the wall for support. Children were inside, laughing at a cartoon on TV, not knowing their father had thrown them away like old clothes. Grace closed her eyes, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. Her heart whispered one thing: "How do I carry this burden alone?" And that was how Grace's long, painful journey truly began. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. And the months quietly became years. Grace never saw Jonathan again. At first, she thought maybe he would come back when the excitement of his new life died down. But as the days dragged on, reality grew sharper. He was never coming back. Jonathan had chosen another woman, another life, over his family.
Raising 2 children alone was never easy. Grace carried her pain like a heavy basket on her head every day. She smiled for her children, but inside she was broken. Money was always tight. Her teacher's salary was too small to feed a family. So after teaching, she rushed to the market to sell fruits and vegetables. Her hands were often stained with mango juice and dust from the road. Sometimes she sold until late in the night, standing under a dim lantern, her back aching, her voice hoarse from shouting, "Buy your oranges! Fresh mangoes here!" At home, she washed clothes, cooked, and helped the children with homework. She barely slept. Some nights she sat in the dark, her head resting on the table, whispering, "God, give me strength." Chioma sometimes heard her crying. The little girl would tiptoe to her mother's side and hold her hand. "Mummy, don't cry. I will read very well and become a doctor. Then I will buy you a big house." Grace would hug her, tears soaking the child's hair. "Amen, my child. Amen." In Enugu, people talk. They always talk. Some neighbors pitied Grace. They shook their heads and said, "That poor woman. Her husband left her." Others mocked. "Ah, she must have done something wrong. Why else would a man leave?" Each time Grace walked to the market, she felt eyes watching her. Some women avoided her, as if her husband's betrayal might spread like sickness. Some men tried to take advantage of her loneliness. One man said, "Grace, you are still young. Forget Jonathan. Come and be with me." Grace looked him in the eyes and said firmly, "I would rather stand alone in truth than sit in lies again." There were nights when food was not enough. Grace would cook one small pot of rice and serve Chioma and David full plates. When they asked, "Mummy, won't you eat?" she would smile and say, "I already ate in school." But the truth was she had not eaten all day. She would drink water, press her stomach, and sleep hungry. Still, she never allowed her children to go without school fees. Even if it meant carrying heavy loads for people in the market or staying awake to sew clothes for extra money, she found a way. Even in her struggles, small joys came. Chioma began to excel in school. Teachers praised her brilliance. David, though playful, showed talent in drawing. One day, he brought home a picture he had drawn of their family. Grace in the middle, Chioma holding her hand, and himself with a big smile. But Jonathan's place was empty. "Why didn't you draw Daddy?" Grace asked softly. David shrugged. "I don't remember his face well anymore." Grace's heart broke. She excused herself to the kitchen and wept silently. 5 years later, life had found a rhythm, even if it was hard. Grace had grown tougher, her face stronger, her steps firmer. People no longer looked at her as a broken woman but as a survivor. She was respected, though whispers of Jonathan's betrayal never fully died. One evening, as Grace returned from the market, tired and sweaty, she saw a white envelope on her doorstep. First, she thought it was a bill. But when she opened it, her heart nearly stopped. It was a wedding invitation. The name written in bold letters. Jonathan and Rebecca. The date, 2 weeks from now. The place. A grand hotel in Enugu. Grace dropped the letter. Her chest pounded. Her hands trembled. The man who had abandoned her, who had left her to suffer, was about to marry another woman as if she and her children had never existed. Her friends gathered around her when she told them. "Grace, don't go," one warned. "You will only open old wounds." Another shook her head. "If you go, people will mock you. They will say you are still chasing him." But Grace remained silent. That night she could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling, remembering the cold text message. She remembered Chioma's tears, David's hunger, her years of sweat and struggle. Her heart whispered, "Don't go." But another voice inside her whispered louder, "Go. Not to beg, not to cry, but to show him you are no longer broken." On the morning of the wedding, Grace wore her best dress. It was not new, but it was neat and elegant. She tied her hair back, applied a touch of powder, and stood before the mirror. She whispered to her reflection, "I am not the same woman you left. I am stronger now." Chioma held her hand. "Mummy, are you sure you want to go?" Grace smiled faintly. "Yes, my child. Sometimes silence is weakness. Sometimes speaking is freedom." The hotel was decorated with flowers, lights, and music. Guests filled the hall, dressed in fine clothes, their laughter filling the air. Grace walked in quietly, her head high, her steps firm. Then it happened. Jonathan turned. His eyes met hers. His face drained of color. The smile he wore for the crowd froze. He stood stiff, his jaw tight, his eyes wide with shock. Grace did not blink. She stood tall, her eyes steady, her heart calm. The crowd turned too, whispering, "Is that not Jonathan's wife? What is she doing here?" Rebecca, the bride, looked from Jonathan to Grace, confusion in her eyes. And in that moment, the battle Grace had carried for 5 years rose to the surface. The truth was about to be revealed. Grace took one step forward. The hall grew silent. Jonathan's hands shook as he tried to cover his fear. Rebecca's smile faltered. And with a calm, steady voice, Grace opened her mouth to speak. The hall was silent. The music stopped. The guests whispered like rushing wind. All eyes were on Grace. Jonathan's face turned pale. The confident man who once walked out of his house without looking back now looked like a trapped animal. His hands shook, his lips pressed tight. He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. Rebecca, the bride, frowned. "Jonathan, who is this woman?" Grace stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "My name is Grace. I am Jonathan's wife. The woman he abandoned 5 years ago with 2 children." The hall gasped. The whispers grew louder. Some guests clapped their hands to their mouths in shock. Jonathan raised his hand, trying to stop her. "Grace, please, not here." But Grace did not stop. She had carried pain too long. Her voice grew stronger. "This man standing before you is not the man you think he is. He told you he was free. But he is not free. He left me and our children with nothing. He lied, he deceived, he broke his promises." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Is this true, Jonathan?" Jonathan stammered. "It's not what it looks like. She is lying." Grace reached into her small handbag and pulled out the old wedding photo she had kept. It showed her and Jonathan years ago, smiling happily on their wedding day. She held it up high for everyone to see. "Does this look like a lie?" The crowd gasped again. Rebecca's hand trembled. She dropped the bouquet of flowers she was holding. "Jonathan, you told me you were divorced. You told me she left you." Jonathan's face crumbled. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Rebecca stepped back, shaking her head. "How could you do this? How could you build a new life on lies?" The wedding hall erupted. Some guests shouted. Others walked out in anger. Phones were raised, recording everything. Rebecca turned to the officiating pastor and said in a broken voice, "This wedding is over." The music stopped completely. The flowers, the cake, the decorations, all suddenly looked meaningless. Jonathan stood alone, his head bent, his reputation shattered. Grace turned slowly, lifted her chin, and walked out. She did not look back. The sun was shining outside. Grace breathed deeply, her chest lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. Her friends rushed to her side. "Grace, you did it. You faced him." Grace smiled faintly. "I did not come to destroy him. I came to tell the truth. Lies destroy themselves." The video of Grace's words spread like fire on social media. People all over Enugu watched it. They shook their heads at Jonathan. Some said, "How can a man be so wicked?" Others said, "Grace is a strong woman. She is a lioness." Jonathan lost his respect. Friends avoided him. Business partners cut him off. His name became a warning. At home, Grace cooked jollof rice for her children. Chioma and David laughed loudly at the dining table, playfully fighting over a piece of chicken. "Mummy, you are the best," David said with his mouth full. Grace smiled. She looked at her children and felt a warmth that Jonathan could never give her. She had lost a husband, but she had not lost herself. She had not lost love. In the quiet of her kitchen, with laughter filling the air, Grace whispered, "Thank you, Lord. I survived." Years later, when Chioma grew older, she asked her mother, "Mummy, what did you learn from all this?" Grace answered softly, "I learned that lies never last. And I learned that children need presents, not presents." Jonathan thought money and fake promises could replace love. But he was wrong. What keeps a family is truth, love, and care, not empty words. Chioma nodded, her eyes shining with wisdom beyond her years. Grace's story became a lesson to many women and men in Enugu. She showed that strength is not in shouting or fighting, but in standing tall and telling the truth. Jonathan's life collapsed because it was built on lies. Grace thrived because she faced her pain, loved her children, and refused to stay silent. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not destroying the one who betrayed you, but living better without them. Truth always wins. Lies always fall. If you have not subscribed to my channel, you might not hear my voice again. But if you are, then you are growing every day. Check my page for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.